The blizzard had come without warning, turning the Montana Mountain Pass into a white hell. Sarah Brennan pressed herself against the rocky outcropping, her thin shawl doing nothing against the wind that cut through her wedding dress like knives. 3 days ago, she'd fled her father's ranch rather than marry Clayton Marsh, the cattle baron who'd bought her like livestock. Now she was dying in the snow, and part of her wondered if she'd made the right choice. Her fingers, blue with cold, fumbled with the gold locket around her neck, her mother's last gift. Maybe someone would find it, find her body, and know she'd tried. Through the swirling white, she could barely make out the dark shape of a cabin tucked against the mountain. She stumbled toward it, falling twice before her frozen fists found the wooden door. Before we continue with Sarah's desperate journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Where are you listening from today? Please let us know in the comments. The door opened before she could knock again, and Sarah found herself staring up at a man who seemed carved from the mountain itself. He stood well over 6 feet, with shoulders that filled the doorframe and arms thick as tree trunks beneath his worn flannel shirt. His dark beard was frosted with ice, but his eyes, gray as storm clouds, held an unexpected gentleness as they took in her desperate state. "Please," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. "I have this." She held out the locket with shaking hands. "It's gold. Real gold. I need—" "Keep your gold," the man said, his voice deep and rough as gravel. His large hand wrapped around hers, closing her fingers back over the locket. "What you need is warmth and safety. Both are free here." Before Sarah could protest, he'd scooped her up as if she weighed nothing, carrying her inside the cabin. The heat from the stone fireplace hit her like a physical force, making her gasp. He set her down on a chair near the flames, then disappeared into another room, returning with a heavy wool blanket that he wrapped around her shoulders. "Name's Jacob Stone," he said, kneeling before the fire to stoke it higher. "This is my trapping cabin. You're safe here." "Sarah Brennan," she managed through chattering teeth. "I'm sorry to impose, Mr. Stone. I was trying to reach the settlement." "In a wedding dress? To a blizzard?" His eyes met hers, and she saw no judgment there, only quiet understanding. "You running from something or to something?" "From," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "My father sold me to Clayton Marsh. I wouldn't." "Then you made the right choice." Jacob stood, moving to the stove where a pot of stew simmered. "Marsh is a snake. You'll stay here until the storm passes and you're strong enough to travel. No obligation, no payment needed." Over the next 3 days, as the blizzard raged outside, Sarah discovered that Jacob Stone was unlike any man she'd ever known. He gave her his bedroom while he slept by the fire. He cooked meals and never expected her to serve him. When she offered to help with chores, he taught her how to skin rabbits and cure pelts, treating her as a partner rather than a burden. "Why do you live up here alone?" she asked on the 4th morning, helping him sort through his trap lines in the barn attached to the cabin. Jacob's hands stilled on the steel trap he was repairing. "Had a wife once, Catherine. She died giving birth to our daughter 5 years back. The baby died too." His voice was steady, but Sarah saw the grief that still lived in his eyes. "Couldn't stay in town after that. Too many memories. The mountain doesn't ask questions, doesn't expect me to move on before I'm ready." Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. That's a loss no one should bear." and being sold like cattle is something no woman should face. He looked at her directly. We've both got scars, Sarah. Difference is, yours are fresh. Mine have had time to settle. That night, Sarah woke to sounds of distress from the main room. She found Jacob thrashing on his bedroll, caught in a nightmare. Without thinking, she knelt beside him, gently touching his shoulder. Jacob, you're safe. You're home. His eyes snapped open, and for a moment, she saw raw anguish there before awareness returned. I'm sorry, he said roughly. Did I wake you? I'm glad I could help. She sat back on her heels. Do you want to talk about it? For a long moment, he was silent. Then, like a dam breaking, the words came. He told her about Catherine's laugh, about choosing names for their daughter, about holding them both as they slipped away. Sarah listened, and when he finished, she simply took his hand in hers. You love them well, she said softly. That love doesn't disappear just because they're gone. It stays in you, makes you the man who opened his door to a stranger in a storm. Jacob's calloused thumb brushed over her knuckles. You're stronger than you know, Sarah Brennan. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding together. Strength isn't the absence of fear, he said. It's choosing to live despite it. You chose yourself over a life of misery. That took courage. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah found herself falling into a rhythm with Jacob. He taught her to shoot, to track game, to read the weather in the clouds. She discovered a freedom in the mountains she'd never known existed. The freedom to be herself, to make choices, to speak her mind without fear of violence. And somewhere along the way, fear transformed into something else entirely. It happened during a warm afternoon in early spring. Jacob was chopping wood, his shirt discarded in the sun, and Sarah found herself watching the play of muscles across his back, the way sweat gleamed on his skin. When he caught her staring, she blushed crimson. Something wrong? He asked, setting down the axe. No, she struggled for words. You're very large. Jacob went still, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. That bother you? No, she said quickly. It's not that. It's just that Clayton was a big man too, and he used to say... She trailed off, old fears surfacing. He said his wedding night would break me in proper, that I needed to learn my place. Jacob's jaw tightened, but his voice remained gentle. Come here, Sarah. She approached slowly, and he took her hand, placing it against his chest, where his heart beat steady and strong beneath her palm. Feel that? He asked. I'm a big man, yes, strong enough to hurt if I wanted to. But strength isn't about causing pain. It's about choosing gentleness. It's about control. His gray eyes held hers. I see a woman worth cherishing, not breaking. And if you ever wanted, if we ever... He took a breath. I would never hurt you. I'd learn to be gentle as you needed, for as long as you needed. Sarah's breath caught. You're too big, she whispered, but there was less fear in her voice now, and something else, something warm and wanting. It'll hurt. Jacob's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch feather light, despite his size. Then I'll learn to be gentle, he said softly. Sarah, you're not property. You're a person, and you deserve to be touched like something precious, because that's exactly what you are. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that she'd fallen in love with this gentle giant of a man. Jacob, The sound of horses interrupted her. Jacob's demeanor changed instantly, his hand moving to the rifle by the door. Get inside. Bar the door behind me. What is it? Riders, coming fast. His eyes met hers. Could be nothing, but if it's Marsh... It was Marsh. Through the cabin window, Sarah watched as 5 men rode into the clearing, Clayton Marsh at their head. He was a bull of a man, thick through the chest and neck, with cold blue eyes that had always made her skin crawl. "Stone," Marsh called out, "I know you've got my property in there. Send her out, and there won't be trouble." Jacob stood on the porch, rifle loose in his hands but ready. "Miss Brennan is a free woman, not property. And she's staying right where she is. Her father sold her to me fair and square. I paid good money. Can't buy a person, Marsh. That paper you're holding isn't worth the ink it's written in." Marsh's face darkened. "That mountain air must have frozen your brains, Stone. You're 1 man against 5. Hand her over, or we'll burn you out." Sarah's heart hammered as she watched Jacob's shoulders set. She knew what he was thinking. He'd die before letting Marsh take her, and he would die, outnumbered as he was. She couldn't let that happen. Slipping out the back door, Sarah circled through the trees until she reached the barn. Jacob had taught her to shoot, and his spare rifle was there. Her hands trembled as she loaded it, but her resolve was steel. The confrontation had escalated. Marsh's men had fanned out, surrounding the cabin. "Last chance, Stone," Marsh was saying. "We fire that cabin and you both burn." "Then you better have good aim," Jacob said calmly, "because I'm not moving." Sarah stepped out from behind the barn, rifle raised. "Nobody's burning anything." 5 pairs of eyes swung toward her. Marsh's face twisted with fury. "There you are, you ungrateful." "I'm not your property, Clayton," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I never was. My father had no right to sell me, and you have no right to claim me. The law says different." "The law says a lot of things that aren't right," Jacob said, and Sarah heard pride in his voice. "But here's what's going to happen. You're going to ride out of here, Marsh. Tell Brennan his daughter is dead if you want. Or tell him the truth, that she chose freedom over his blood money. Either way, you leave empty-handed." "And if we don't?" one of Marsh's men asked, hand drifting toward his pistol. "Then you'll have to go through both of us," Sarah said. "And I promise you Mr. Stone has taught me to shoot very well." For a long moment, tension hung in the air like smoke. Then Marsh spat into the dirt. "She ain't worth dying over, boys. Let's go." But as he turned his horse, Sarah saw his hand move. "Jacob!" she screamed. Everything happened at once. Marsh drew his pistol, Jacob's rifle came up, and Sarah fired. Her shot went wide, but it was enough to make Marsh's horse rear, spoiling his aim. Jacob's shot didn't miss. The bullet struck Marsh's gun hand, sending his pistol flying. "Next one won't be so charitable," Jacob said coldly. "Ride out, now." Marsh, clutching his bleeding hand, didn't need to be told twice. He and his men wheeled their horses and disappeared down the mountain trail in a cloud of dust. Sarah's legs gave out, and suddenly Jacob was there, catching her, holding her against his broad chest as the rifle fell from her nerveless fingers. "You're okay," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe. You're so damn brave, Sarah." "I couldn't let him hurt you," she said, her voice muffled against his shirt. "Jacob, I couldn't." I know. He pulled back just enough to see her face. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. These past weeks with you, they've been... I haven't felt alive like this since Catherine died. You make me want to come down from this mountain, want to build something real again." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared of wanting this. Scared of what it means." "Me too," Jacob said honestly. "Scared I'll lose you like I lost them. Scared I'm too rough for someone like you. But Sarah, I'm more scared of letting you walk away without telling you I love you. her breath caught. "You love me? From the moment you held out that locket and told me you needed help, I saw courage there, and fire, and a will to survive that matched my own." His hands framed her face, gentle despite their size. "I love you, Sarah Brennan, and if you'll have me, I want to marry you. Not because of obligation or debt, but because I want to spend every day of my life showing you what gentle strength looks like." "You're too big," she whispered again, but this time she was smiling through tears. "It'll hurt." "Then I'll learn to be gentle," he promised, and kissed her. It was nothing like Sarah had feared. Jacob's lips were soft against hers, questioning rather than demanding. His hands remained steady on her face, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Sarah didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her own hands finding their way to his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. When they finally parted, Sarah was breathless. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." They were married 3 weeks later by a traveling preacher who made rounds through the mountain settlements. Sarah wore a dress she'd sewn herself from fabric Jacob had traded pelts for. Simple calico in deep blue that matched the Montana sky. Jacob wore his cleanest shirt and a look of wonder that made Sarah's heart swell. The ceremony was brief, but when Jacob slipped a ring onto her finger, a gold band he'd carved himself, inlaid with a piece of dark stone from the mountain, Sarah felt something settle in her soul. This was home. This was family. This was love. That night, in the bedroom that was now theirs, Jacob proved every promise he'd made. He was gentle, patient, taking time to learn her responses, to soothe her fears. "You're too big," Sarah whispered against his shoulder, half laughing, half nervous. "Then I'll learn to be gentle," Jacob murmured back, and showed her that size and strength, when coupled with love and patience, were nothing to fear at all. The first summer of their marriage brought challenges Sarah had never imagined. A drought settled over the mountains, drying up streams and sending game deeper into the wilderness. The vegetable garden she'd planted withered despite her best efforts, and the heat made the cabin feel like an oven. One evening, Sarah sat on the porch steps, staring at the brown stalks that had once been promising tomato plants. Frustration burned behind her eyes. Back at her father's ranch, there had been hired hands to manage such problems. Here, it was just her and Jacob against nature itself. "Hey," Jacob's deep voice came from behind her. He sat down beside her, the step creaking under his weight. "What's got you looking so fierce?" "I killed them," Sarah said flatly, gesturing at the garden. "Everything I planted. I thought I could do this, Jacob, but I can't even keep vegetables alive." Jacob was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up a handful of the dry soil, letting it sift through his fingers. "See this dirt? It's teaching you something. This year, it's teaching you about drought. Next year, you'll know to plant different crops, to save water differently, to plan for dry spells." "Next year," Sarah repeated bitterly, "if we survive this one." "We will." Jacob's certainty was absolute. "Tomorrow, I'm taking you up to the high meadow. There's a spring up there that never runs dry, and I know where the elk go when the lower elevations get too hot. You're going to learn to hunt big game, Sarah. Not rabbits. Elk." She turned to look at him. "You think I can?" "I know you can." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You face down Marsh and his men. You can face down an elk." The next morning, they set out before dawn. climbing higher into the mountains than Sarah had ever been. Jacob moved through the terrain like a shadow, teaching her to read tracks, to smell the wind, to listen for the sounds that didn't belong. By midday, they'd reached a meadow so beautiful it stole Sarah's breath. Wildflowers in purple and gold, a crystal stream cutting through the center, and beyond it all, the snow-capped peaks touching the sky. "This is incredible," she whispered. "This is ours," Jacob corrected. "I filed claim on this land 5 years ago. Someday, I want to build a real house up here, with windows facing east to catch the sunrise. Big enough for—" He trailed off, old pain flickering across his face. "Big enough for a family," Sarah finished softly. She took his hand. "Jacob, I know you're scared, but we can't live our whole lives afraid of what might happen. I died when Catherine died," he admitted, his voice raw. "Took me 5 years to feel alive again, and that's because of you. The thought of losing you. Then don't think about losing me. Think about living with me, building that house, filling it with noise and life and love." She squeezed his hand. "Together, remember?" "Together," he agreed, and some of the tension left his shoulders. They spent the afternoon tracking elk. Jacob showed Sarah how to move silently, how to use the terrain for cover, how to read the animal's behavior. When they finally spotted a small herd, he positioned her carefully, adjusted her aim, and whispered instructions in her ear. "Breathe," he murmured. "Slow and steady. You're strong enough for this, Sarah. Trust yourself." The rifle kicked against her shoulder, the sound echoing across the meadow. The elk fell, clean and quick. Sarah's heart pounded as Jacob checked her kill, then turned to her with undisguised pride. "Perfect shot," he said. "Right through the heart. He didn't suffer." As they worked together to field dress the elk, Sarah felt something shift inside her. She wasn't the frightened girl who'd stumbled to Jacob's door in a wedding dress. She was becoming someone new, someone capable, someone strong. That night, back at the cabin with fresh meat preserving in the smokehouse, Sarah lay in Jacob's arms and talked about the future. "Tell me about the house you want to build," she said. Jacob's chest rumbled beneath her cheek as he spoke. "Big main room with that fireplace facing east. Kitchen with room for a proper stove and a table big enough for—" He hesitated. "For how many?" Sarah prompted gently. "I used to imagine 6, he admitted. Catherine wanted a big family, but I don't know if I can." "6, Sarah said firmly. "We'll build a table for 6, and we'll fill those chairs, Jacob. Maybe not right away, but we will." His arms tightened around her. "You sure about this? About me?" "I'm sure about us." She tilted her head up to kiss his jaw. "You taught me to shoot, to hunt, to survive. Now I'm teaching you something, how to hope again." Autumn brought its own trials. Jacob had gone down to the settlement to trade pelts and purchase winter supplies, leaving Sarah alone for the first time since Marsh's attack. She'd insisted she'd be fine, but as the first night fell and the cabin grew dark around her, old fears crept back. Every sound made her jump. The wind in the trees became footsteps. The cry of an owl became a man's shout. She sat by the fire with the rifle across her lap, fighting the urge to barricade herself in the bedroom. "I'm being ridiculous," she told herself firmly. "I killed an elk. I faced down Marsh. I'm not afraid of the dark." But she was. Not of the dark itself, but of the memories it carried. Of her father's rages, of Clayton Marsh's cold promises, of helplessness and vulnerability. The second night was worse. A mountain lion screamed somewhere in the darkness, and Sarah's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the rifle. she found herself talking aloud, pretending Jacob was there. "What would you say right now?" she asked the empty room. "You'd tell me I'm stronger than I think. That fear is natural, but it doesn't have to control me. That I have everything I need to protect myself." She took a deep breath and stood up. If the mountain lion came, she'd handle it. If bandits came, she'd handle them too. She wasn't helpless anymore. On the third day, as Sarah was checking the trap lines, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold, a child crying. She found the little girl huddled beneath a pine tree, maybe 6 years old, dressed in ragged clothes and shivering with cold. "Hey there," Sarah said gently, approaching slowly. "My name's Sarah. What's yours?" "Emma," the girl whimpered. "Please don't hurt me." Sarah's heart broke. "I would never hurt you, sweetheart. Are you lost?" Emma nodded, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. "Papa said to hide in the trees when the bad men came, but I can't find him, and I'm so hungry." Sarah's mind raced. Bad men could mean bandits, which meant they might still be in the area. But this child needed help now. "Come on, Emma. I'm going to take you somewhere safe and warm, and we'll get some food in you. Then we'll figure out how to find your papa, okay?" Back at the cabin, Sarah fed Emma soup and bread, watching the child devour it like she hadn't eaten in days. As Emma ate, she talked. Her family had been traveling to Oregon when bandits attacked their wagon. Her father had told her to run and hide. She'd been wandering for 2 days. "Did the bad men have your papa?" Sarah asked carefully. Emma nodded, fresh tears falling. "They tied him up. And Mama." Her voice broke. "Mama wouldn't wake up." Sarah pulled the child into her arms, letting her cry. Her mind was already working. The bandits might still be nearby. Emma's father might still be alive. And if he was probably terrified for his daughter. When Jacob returned late that afternoon, he found Sarah armed and ready, with Emma wrapped in blankets by the fire. "We've got a situation," Sarah said, and quickly explained. Jacob's face grew grim as he listened. "Bandits in these mountains are bad news. They hole up in the old mine shaft, about 5 miles east. If they took Emma's father there, we have to try to save him," Sarah finished. "Jacob, I know it's dangerous, but this child lost her mother. We can't let her lose her father too." Jacob looked at Emma, then at Sarah, and nodded slowly. "Together?" "Together." They left Emma with their nearest neighbor, a widow named Mrs. Chen, who lived 3 miles down the mountain. Then they set out toward the old mine, moving carefully through the dusk. Jacob had a plan, simple, direct, and dangerous. "I'll create a distraction," he said. "When they come out to investigate, you get Emma's father out. Can you do that?" Sarah checked her rifle, her hands steady. "I can do that." As darkness fell, they approached the mine entrance. Sarah could see firelight flickering inside and hear rough voices. Her heart hammered, but she thought of Emma's tear-stained face and found her courage. Jacob created his distraction by setting fire to a pile of brush upwind of the mine entrance. As smoke began to billow, 3 men came running out, cursing and shouting. In the confusion, Sarah slipped inside. She found Emma's father tied to a support beam, beaten but conscious. "I'm Sarah Stone," she whispered, cutting his bonds with her knife. "Your daughter is safe. Can you walk?" "Emma's alive?" The man's voice cracked. "Thank God. My wife—" "I know. I'm sorry. But Emma needs you now. Can you move?" They made it halfway out of the mine before one of the bandits spotted them. "Hey! Someone's taking the prisoner!" What happened next was a blur. Jacob appeared from the smoke like an avenging angel. his massive fist connecting with the first bandit's jaw. Sarah got Emma's father outside and behind cover, then turned back to help Jacob. The fight was brutal, but brief. 3 men against 1 mountain giant and 1 determined woman. By the time it was over, 2 bandits were unconscious, and the 3rd was running for his life into the darkness. "You came back for me?" Emma's father said, disbelief in his voice as Jacob helped him to his feet. "Why?" "Because your daughter was crying for you," Sarah said, simply. And because it was the right thing to do, they brought Emma's father, whose name was Thomas Wheeler, back to the cabin. Over the next few days, as he recovered from his injuries, Sarah and Jacob learned that he was a carpenter, a widower now, with no family left except Emma. "I don't know what to do," Thomas admitted one evening. "I was taking Emma to Oregon to stay with her mother's sister, but I don't have the money for another wagon, and winter's coming." Jacob and Sarah exchanged a look. "Stay here," Jacob said. "Through the winter, at least. I could use help building a new house come spring. And Emma," he glanced at Sarah, "Emma could use a proper home." "We all could," Sarah added quietly. That winter, the cabin became crowded, but full of life. Thomas proved his worth quickly, repairing everything that needed fixing and planning the new house with Jacob. Emma followed Sarah everywhere, learning to cook and sew and slowly healing from her mother's loss. One snowy evening, as Jacob and Sarah lay together in their bed, listening to Emma's soft snores from her pallet in the corner, Sarah took Jacob's hand and placed it on her belly. "I'm with child," she whispered. "I'm sure of it now." Jacob went very still. In the moonlight filtering through the window, Sarah could see the war of emotions on his face. Joy, terror, hope, and fear, all battling for dominance. "Jacob," she said softly, "I need you here with me, not lost in what-ifs and old grief. Can you do that?" His hand trembled against her belly. "I'm so scared, Sarah." "Me too," she admitted. "But we're going to face it together. We're going to trust in life instead of waiting for loss. And we're going to fill that house you're building with love and noise and chaos and joy." "You're too brave for me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "And you're too big for me," she countered with a small smile. "But we make it work." "Then I'll learn to be gentle," Jacob said, and Sarah heard the vow beneath the familiar words, the promise to be present, to hope, to try. "We'll learn together," Sarah whispered and kissed him. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it brought transformation. Jacob and Thomas had been working through the winter on plans for the new house, and as soon as the ground thawed, they began construction. Sarah, growing rounder with child each day, supervised and helped where she could, with Emma as her cheerful assistant. "When the baby comes, can I help take care of it?" Emma asked one afternoon, her small hand resting on Sarah's belly. "I'm counting on it," Sarah said warmly. "Every baby needs a big sister," Emma beamed. "I've never been a big sister before." The house rose slowly from the meadow, timber by timber. It was larger than the cabin, with real glass windows that Jacob had traded, 3 winters' worth of pelts to afford. The main room faced east, just as he'd imagined, with a massive stone fireplace that Thomas helped build. There was a proper kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a loft that Emma claimed immediately as her own special space. But the work was hard, and the days were long. One evening, about halfway through the construction, Jacob came in from working absolutely exhausted. His hands were raw with blisters, his back ached, and Sarah could see the weariness in every line of his body. "Come here," she said, leading him to a chair. "Sit." "Sarah, I need to." You need to rest, she said firmly. She fetched warm water and clean cloths, then gently began cleaning and bandaging his hands. You're working yourself to death, Jacob. The house will still be there tomorrow. Baby will be here before we know it, he said. Want everything ready. Want you safe and comfortable. I'm safe right now. I'm comfortable right now. Sarah knelt in front of him, her hands covering his. But I need you healthy. Jacob, you can't protect us if you collapse from exhaustion. He looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression softened. You're right. I want to give you everything, Sarah. A real home, security, proof that I can take care of you and the baby. You've already given me everything that matters, Sarah said. You gave me freedom. You gave me love. You gave me a reason to believe in hope again. The house is wonderful, but it's just wood and stone. You are what makes it home. Jacob pulled her up and into his lap, mindful of her swelling belly. How did I get so lucky? He murmured into her hair. You opened your door to a stranger in a storm, Sarah said simply. Everything else followed from that one choice. As summer progressed, the house neared completion. Thomas proved to be a master craftsman, creating beautiful details that transformed the structure into something special. Carved beams, carefully fitted joints, a railing for the porch that looked like flowing water. You've got real talent, Jacob told him one afternoon. Thomas shrugged, but looked pleased. Been working with wood since I was Emma's age. It's the one thing I'm truly good at. You're good at being a father, too, Sarah added, watching Emma play with a doll she'd sewn. That girl adores you. She's all I have left of her mother, Thomas said quietly. Some days, I see Margaret in every smile, every gesture. It's painful and beautiful, all at once. I know what you mean, Jacob said, surprising both Sarah and Thomas. He rarely spoke of Catherine to anyone but Sarah. My first wife, Catherine, she loved these mountains. Every time I see snow on the peaks or wildflowers in the meadow, I remember her. Used to hurt so much, I couldn't bear it. But Sarah taught me something. What's that? Thomas asked. That loving someone doesn't stop when they die. It changes, but it doesn't stop. And making room in your heart for new love doesn't mean you're forgetting the old. Jacob glanced at Sarah. It just means you're brave enough to risk your heart again. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Maybe someday, he finally said. Right now, I'm just trying to get through each day. That's all any of us can do, Sarah said gently. The baby decided to arrive on a warm August evening, 3 weeks before Sarah expected. Jacob had been working on the final touches of the house when Sarah's water broke. He'd gone white as a sheet, then turned into a whirlwind of controlled panic. Thomas, ride for Mrs. Chen, he ordered. Emma, get the water boiling. Sarah, I need you to breathe, Sarah said, even as a contraction gripped her. And I need you to remember that women have been doing this since the beginning of time. Not my woman, Jacob said fiercely. Not carrying my child. Mrs. Chen arrived within the hour, took one look at Jacob's stricken face, and firmly removed him from the bedroom. You'll pace a hole in the floor, she said. Go wait outside. The labor was long and difficult. Sarah could hear Jacob pacing on the porch, hear his low voice talking to Thomas and Emma. Every time she cried out, she heard him make a sound like a wounded animal. It would have been funny if it hadn't hurt so much. Finally, as the sun was rising over the mountains, their daughter was born. Tiny, perfect, with a lusty cry that filled the cabin. Mrs. Chen cleaned her up and placed her in Sarah's arms, and Sarah felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known possible. When Jacob was finally allowed back in, he approached the bed like he was walking on sacred ground. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face drawn with worry. But when he saw Sarah holding their daughter, his expression transformed into pure wonder. Are you? His voice broke. We're perfect, Sarah said, smiling through happy tears. Come meet your daughter. Jacob sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Sarah placed the baby in his massive arms. The contrast was almost comical. This giant of a man holding a creature so tiny and fragile. His hands, scarred and calloused from years of hard living, cradled her with infinite gentleness. She's so small, he whispered. Sarah, she's so small. What if I'm too big? What if I hurt her? Sarah recognized the fear in his voice, the same fear he'd had about hurting her. Then you'll learn to be gentle, she said softly, just like you did with me. Jacob looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. I was so scared. All through the labor, I kept thinking, I know, but I'm here, she's here. We're all here, Jacob. Your family is here, and we're staying. Catherine Rose, Jacob said suddenly. Like we planned, but her middle name, can it be Sarah? Catherine Sarah Stone, Sarah tested. I love it. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them wrapped in the golden light of morning, while outside, Thomas and Emma celebrated on the porch and Mrs. Chen cooked breakfast that smelled like heaven. Over the next few months, Jacob proved to be a devoted father. He fashioned a cradle from smooth pine, carved with flowers and hummingbirds. He walked Catherine for hours when she cried, singing old ballads in his deep voice. He changed diapers without complaint and learned to heat milk to exactly the right temperature. But most importantly, he learned to let himself love without constant fear of loss. Sarah watched him transform, watched the last walls around his heart crumble as their daughter grew. You're a natural, Sarah told him one evening, watching him rock Catherine to sleep. I'm terrified every second of every day, Jacob admitted. But it's a good terror, the kind that keeps you sharp, keeps you grateful. That's called being a parent, Sarah said with a smile. By autumn, they'd moved into the new house. The first night there, they held a celebration. Thomas had made furniture, a proper table with 6 chairs, just as Jacob had envisioned. Mrs. Chen brought food. Even a few other mountain families joined in, drawn by stories of the couple who'd faced down bandits and saved a child. As the evening wound down and their guests departed, Jacob stood on the porch of their new home, holding Catherine while Sarah and Emma cleaned up inside. Thomas joined him, looking out at the mountains turned purple in the twilight. Thank you, Thomas said quietly, for taking us in, for giving us a home. You've earned your place here, Jacob said. That house wouldn't exist without you. And Emma? He smiled. Emma's taught me that family isn't just blood. It's the people you choose to stand with. Even so, Thomas persisted, you and Sarah didn't have to do any of this. Most people wouldn't have. Jacob thought about a girl in a wedding dress, stumbling through a blizzard. A girl who'd offered him gold when all she needed was kindness. Sarah taught me something, he said. That opening your door, opening your heart, that's never wrong, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary. That night, after everyone was asleep, Sarah and Jacob stood in their new bedroom, their first bedroom as a married couple in their own home. Through the east-facing window, they could see stars scattered across the velvet sky. "Do you remember what you said that first night?" Sarah asked, leaning back against Jacob's chest. "When I offered you my mother's locket? I told you to keep your gold, that what you needed was warmth and safety, and both were free." "You gave me so much more than that," Sarah said. "You gave me myself back. You showed me what it meant to be strong, to be loved, to be worth something beyond what someone would pay for me." Jacob's arms tightened around her. "And you gave me a reason to live again, to hope, to believe that loss doesn't have to be the end of the story." Sarah turned in his arms to face him. "You know what I was thinking earlier? When we were all at the table together, you, me, Catherine, Emma, Thomas, I was thinking about that first day, when I was so desperate, I would have sold my mother's locket just to survive one more day. And now look at us. Look at what we built. Together," Jacob said, his favorite word. "Together," Sarah agreed and kissed him. 3 years later, Sarah stood in the doorway of their home, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Catherine toddled around the porch, chattering to herself in that way 3-year-olds do. Emma, now 9 and gangly with growth, was helping Thomas in the workshop he'd built next to the main house. And inside, in the room Sarah had spent months preparing, slept their son, Jacob Samuel Stone, born 2 months ago with his father's gray eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. Sarah's hand rested on her belly again, where another child grew. This one had been a surprise, coming so soon after Samuel. But surprises seemed to be what their life was built on. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. A rider was coming up the mountain trail. Unusual, but not alarming. Not anymore. Jacob appeared from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants, his eyes finding Sarah immediately, the way they always did. The rider dismounted, and Sarah recognized him with a shock. It was one of the men who'd ridden with Clayton Marsh 3 years ago. "Mrs. Stone," the man said, removing his hat, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just thought you should know. Clayton Marsh died last week. Fever took him." Sarah felt nothing at the news. No relief, no sadness, just nothing. "Thank you for telling me." "There's more," the man continued. "Your father, he died too, about 6 months back. You inherited everything. The ranch, the land, everything. Lawyer in town's been trying to find you." Sarah looked at Jacob, who'd come to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. "I don't want it," she said clearly. "My father sold me like cattle. Whatever he left behind, it's not mine. It never was." "Tss. Ma'am, it's a lot of money." "I have everything I need right here," Sarah said, gesturing to the house, to Catherine playing on the porch, to the mountains that had become her home. "You can sell the ranch, give the money to the church, or use it to buy freedom for other women in situations like I was in. I want no part of it." The rider looked between Sarah and Jacob, clearly confused by someone turning down wealth. But he nodded, mounted up, and rode away. When he was gone, Jacob pulled Sarah into his arms. "You're sure about that? It's a fortune you just turned down." "I'm richer right now than I ever was on that ranch," Sarah said firmly. "And I earned everything we have here. Earned it by choosing myself, by choosing you, by choosing this life. My father's money would feel dirty. It would feel like saying he had the right to sell me." "You're remarkable. You know that?" Jacob said, kissing her forehead. "I learned from the best," Sarah countered. That evening, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Sarah and Jacob sat on their porch, watching the stars emerge. Thomas had gone to town that morning and wouldn't be back until the next day. Emma was asleep in her loft. It was just the two of them, the way it had been that first night. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd turned me away?" Sarah asked. "If you'd told me to go to the settlement instead?" Jacob was quiet for a moment. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted, "and it terrifies me. You would have died in that storm. I would have lived out my days alone on this mountain, trapped in grief. Catherine and Samuel wouldn't exist. Emma would have died in the wilderness with her father. Thomas would have lost his daughter and his will to live. One choice," Sarah marveled. "One moment where you decided to be kind instead of cautious. Best decision I ever made," Jacob said. "Though I'll admit, when you first held out that locket, I thought you were just another lost soul who'd move on as soon as the storm cleared. What changed your mind? You did. That first night, when you heard me having nightmares and came to help me instead of hiding in your room. Most people would have stayed away from the crazy mountain man. But you saw someone in pain, and your first instinct was to help." He squeezed her hand. "That's when I knew you were special. That's when I started falling in love with you." Sarah blinked back tears. "I was so scared of you at first. You were so big, so strong. Everything I'd been taught said men like you were dangerous. And now? Now I know that size and strength are just tools. It's the heart that matters. And you have the gentlest heart I've ever known." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You kept your promise, you know. You learned to be gentle. Not just with me, but with the children, with Emma, even with yourself." "I had a good teacher," Jacob said. "You taught me that gentle isn't the same as weak, that softness can coexist with strength, that I could be a warrior when needed and a protector always." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the mountains fade into darkness. Somewhere in the house, Samuel made a small sound, and Sarah smiled. "I should check on him." "I'll come with you," Jacob said, rising and offering his hand. Together they walked back into their home, the home they'd built with their own hands, filled with their own choices, sustained by their own love. Sarah looked at their sleeping children, at the sturdy walls around them, at Jacob standing tall and proud beside her, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. "We did good," she whispered. "We did great," Jacob corrected. "And we're going to keep doing great, for as long as we're breathing." "Together," Sarah said. "Together," Jacob agreed. And in that single word was everything. Promise and devotion, past and future, fear overcome, and love embraced. The mountain wind whispered through the pines outside, carrying with it the scent of sage and snow. Inside, the Stone family slept, safe and warm and loved. And if sometimes Jacob still had nightmares, Sarah was there to wake him. And if sometimes Sarah still flinched at unexpected sounds, Jacob was there to hold her. They healed each other, day by day, choice by choice, gentle touch by gentle touch. Years would pass. More children would come. Emma would grow up and fall in love with a young rancher from the settlement. And Sarah and Jacob would dance at her wedding. Thomas would eventually open his heart again to a widow with 2 children of her own, expanding their mountain family even further. Catherine would inherit her father's love of the wilderness and become a guide, leading settlers safely through the mountain passes. Samuel would become a doctor, carrying forward his parents' legacy of helping those in need. But that first house, built with hope and love and second chances, would stand for generations, and people passing by would sometimes stop and ask about it, drawn by something they couldn't quite name, some quality in the very walls that spoke of redemption and courage, and the transformative power of gentleness. And if those travelers were lucky, they might meet an old couple sitting on that east-facing porch, watching the sunrise together. They might hear the woman call her husband "too big" in a voice full of laughter and love. They might hear the man respond with a phrase worn smooth by decades of use, "Then I'll learn to be gentle." And they might wonder at the way those two people looked at each other, as if they were still seeing each other for the first time, still marveling at the miracle of having found one another in a storm. Because that's what true love looks like. Not perfect people finding each other, but broken people choosing each other. Again and again and again, together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Sarah and Jacob's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.